has a few shows in their lives that they will always remember fondly, and can always look back on no matter how much time has passed. For me, shows like that would be South Park, Futurama, Hey Arnold, Ed, Edd n Eddy, and one that I have long since needed to talk about, Teen Titans. Titans! Not Teen Titans Go! I'm so sick of having to make this distinction now. No, the original Teen Titans, arguably one of the best superhero shows ever made, with memorable characters, deep stories, and some really good comedy sprinkled in. It's a show that's so hard not to enjoy, and it's a show with so much to talk about that I need to bring in someone just so I don't explode with gush for this show. So joining me today is the always enjoyable and always well-mannered Shadow Streak.
Hey Jem, thanks for inviting me. And I couldn't have put it better myself. Teen Titans just so happens to be one of my personal favorite action shows ever made, so I'd be more than happy to join you for this countdown video. What better way to collab than doing a top 10 of one of our favorite superhero cartoons, right? Although I should probably let the audience know. Considering the show's diverse library of both comedic and drama-heavy episodes, we certainly had trouble narrowing this list down to just 10 episodes. Also, for clarification, when compiling these entries, we had decided to restrict ourselves to only talking about one multi-part episode for the sake of not overcrowding the entire list with too many of them, because, let's face it, half the list would be multi-parters if that were the case.
Well, I'm ready to start reliving some awesome parts of my childhood. You ready, Shadow?
Absolutely, man. Let's get to it. These here are the top 10 best Teen Titans episodes. Teen Titans!
Go! What can I say? I love origin stories, and this is the type of origin story you would want from a show like this, as it not only delves into the Titans' backstories, but it lets you see what their personalities were like before they all became a team, and gives you a legit sense of how much they've all grown throughout the series, as teammates and as people.
And that's exactly why we've chosen it to start off the list, as what better way to introduce the top 10 Teen Titans episodes than with the introduction to Teen Titans themselves. When it comes down to it, this is all I could ever ask for from an origin episode for a superhero show. We get to learn where each of the Titans were right before they met up with each other, learning about their past a bit more, such as Robin just recently going solo, or Beast Boy quitting the Doom Patrol. It does a lot for fleshing out the characters' previous lives before the show takes place.
It's also really cool seeing how different all the Titans were before teaming up. Starfire is an aggressive fugitive, Beast Boy is desperate for companionship, Cyborg tries to hide himself away from the world, Raven is too afraid of being considered an outcast to really approach anyone, and since this episode is a Season 5 episode, if you had been watching it up to this point, these characters would seem vastly different. So, it really puts their character growths into perspective. Well, I wouldn't recommend watching this episode first. In fact, I'd highly recommend working your way up to it in order to fully appreciate it. This is still an enjoyable episode with tons of great character-driven moments, and not to mention great action, that definitely belongs on this list.
There. Now maybe we can be...
Yeah, it's got a little something for the fan fictions too.
We couldn't go the whole video without bringing up a Control Freak episode, and lucky for us, number 9 fits that bill. Fear Itself, an episode which features all of the Titans watching a scary movie together after defeating Control Freak at a local video store, centers around the Titans living the events of a horror movie in real life. Mysterious killers, similar to those in the movie they watch, begin to roam around Titan's Tower late at night, taking out each of the Titans one by one in typical horror movie fashion. As a fan of classic horror movies myself, I've gotta say that this one instantly grabbed my attention because I love seeing a cartoon integrate the typical genre tropes that one would see in those kinds of films.
Also, anyone will tell you there's that one horror movie that totally messes them up, to the point where they're afraid to go to sleep. For me, it'd be Poltergeist.
And for me, it'd either be The Thing or The Shining.
And we get to see Raven go through the motions of that, which is interesting to see unfold since she's so stubborn about not ever being afraid. And when the Titans start disappearing one by one, good God, is it creepy. I mean, check out this scene for example.
Cyborg. I could use a little more light. Cyborg.
That is probably more disturbing than any of the ways the other Titans were taken. Not only was Cyborg the last one standing, he disappears so quietly and so suddenly that it messes with your mind even more, and it's so hard not to feel your adrenaline pumping when you realize Raven is all alone.
What I like most about this episode is how Raven comes to terms with her fears despite trying to deny them. It just goes to show that even if you're as dark and brooding as someone like Raven, you can still be scared of something. And that's perfectly okay because it's entirely normal. Okay, maybe it's not normal to have your fears manifest themselves into demonic horror creatures bent on murdering each and every one of your friends, but it is okay to have fears and acknowledge them. This ultimately makes Raven seem more human because of it, especially because she tends to hide her emotions rather than express them when compared to someone like Starfire or Beast Boy. As the saying goes, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And this episode takes that saying to heart. Literally.
Beast Boy! What did I tell you? Funny guy goes first!
Bunny Raven, or How to Make a Titan Animal Disappear. The only flaw with this episode is its long-ass title. Now, while Teen Titans makes damn good action and horror episodes, they also have a knack for being funny. Shame you guys couldn't learn from them. This episode is about the Titans being sucked into the hats of a villainous magician named Mumbo Jumbo, voiced, by the way, by Tom Kenny, which makes him even more entertaining. And he turns all the Titans into animals, except for Beast Boy, who he turns into a lamp, which actually leads to more moments that you wouldn't expect to be so comedic, because now Beast Boy can only turn into inanimate objects.
Hey, let me help! I can crank column!
Yes, when it comes to comedy, this is certainly one of the best. It all takes place when the Titans get sucked into Mumbo's hat, where they are essentially forced against their will by Mumbo to become several acts in his show. Being that Mumbo is a magician, the episode displays his magical capabilities in full force, whether it be with his cheap tricks in combat or turning Cyborg into a bear and giving him a tutu. This episode mainly focuses on the dynamic between Mumbo and Raven, seeing as they're both magician characters who focus on different aspects of the art, with Mumbo being a more typical showman type magic, whereas Raven focuses on sorcery and dark magic. It's actually really cool to see the two go back and forth with each other as fellow magicians, and further adds to the laughs that can be had along the way. There's also a Muppets reference, so that was pretty cool too.
What do you get when you cross a magician with a camera? Hocus focus!
There's also some really well done animation in this episode, which you would like to see from an episode focusing on a being that can create anything with his magic. And the way Raven outsmarts Mumbo is in a way that's a loving tribute to traditional magic. And like they say in the episode,
A magician never reveals her secrets.
so I won't spoil it here, but it really shows that this episode has a magic touch.
Haunted. Hands down, what is one of the most talked about episodes in the entire series is the Season 3 episode Haunted, which features Robin experiencing severe mental trauma in the form of hallucinations of his toughest enemy, Slade. What makes matters worse is that none of the other Titans can see what Robin is seeing. Slade is not actually there. It's all just taking place inside Robin's head, but he doesn't know that because he believes what he's seeing to be real. There's a reason this one gets talked about so much by several others years after the series ended, and it's all thanks to Ron Perlman's incredible standout performance in this episode.
I am the thing that keeps you up at night. The evil that haunts every dark corner of your mind. I will never rest. And neither will you.
I don't think any other phrase would be as fitting for the title of this episode as the simple word haunted.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You can basically argue that this episode is a metaphor for PTSD, because Robin is putting himself through hell because of all the mental abuse Slade put him through. And it's hard not to see why this means so much to him, considering the fact that Slade has been Robin's main enemy practically since the start. Though, some of the things he says sound kind of pretentious when you know how Slade was defeated.
I know what I saw! I have to stop him. I'm the only one who can.
Except you weren't even the one who stopped him, it was—
Hey, slow down, man. We're not there yet. We'll get there.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Well, anyway, even with that, it's hard not to worry for Robin's well-being, especially when the Titans verbally state the hell he's putting himself through.
His heart rate is off the charts.
Blood pressure, neurokinetics, most people can't survive this kind of stress.
God, that's so dramatic.
Speaking of dramatic, the lighting in the final scene when Robin is getting senselessly beaten in the basement is pure genius. Throughout the conflict, the lights are seen to flicker on and off, with Slade only appearing when the lights go out, further adding to the darkness that surrounds his influence over Robin's mind. Just as Raven let her fears get the better of her and fear itself, Robin undergoes a similar situation here.
Oh, and it's not just the lighting that plays a big role. There's other things that help indicate how all of this is in Robin's head. When Robin is fighting Slade, he and Slade start jumping all over the place, but whenever Robin is jumping or hitting stuff, it makes a sound. But when Slade is jumping everywhere, well, just watch. He's completely silent, which alone is a subtle implication that he's a figment of Robin's imagination. And the ending scene after Robin is cured of his condition, the reveal Cyborg makes in the final scene with Slade's mask, well, let's just say they really live up to this episode's name, because it's the most haunting moment in this show's history. There's just so much in this episode worth recommending that really show off how flexible the show was, and it's one I'd highly recommend if you want to watch a good thriller.
Slade! 1, 2, 3, 4, go! Teen Titans!
Next, we have another Season 3 episode, and the Season 3 premiere no less, Deception. It's an episode that features Cyborg going undercover and becoming a member of the Hive as a new recruit named Stone. Deception also serves another purpose, however, as it gives us an opportunity to see what life is like for some of the other main villains in the show. Jinx, Mammoth, Gizmo, they're all here and serving the Hive in all its glory.
Gamma maneuver.
Hold on! I don't know that! Then get out of the way!
And I gotta admit, I really like what they do with these characters. Now, throughout the show, I feel it can be kind of easy at points to forget that the majority of the characters in this show are all kids. Well, teenagers, but still, this is one of the first times you really get to see the villains in that light. They like to goof off, they like to hang out, and they even look out for people they view as their friends. None of them are actually portrayed as being black and white. They're portrayed as kids that unfortunately support other causes. And eventually, Cyborg starts to kind of bond with them, and you really understand why. He finally gets to see them as more than just bad guys.
Not to mention the fact that this is the introduction to the primary villain of the season, Brother Blood, who immediately takes a liking to Stone for his skills and performance. He's truly a menacing villain considering he's essentially using the Hive to build an army that will serve him in his quest to achieve power. I like how this sort of puts Cyborg in a predicament, because on one hand he's still a good guy at heart and loyal to the Titans, but on the other hand he has now developed bonds with several of the other Hive members and is on Brother Blood's good side. It's also worth noting that Cyborg has recently been struggling with his robotic half, thus causing him to want to return to the life he once had as a normal human being. Considering Season 3 is dominated by Cyborg's arc, this was a good introduction for the narrative that takes place throughout the entire season.
Couldn't agree more. I'm actually impressed this episode managed to make the possibility of Cyborg changing sides seem genuinely believable and unforced, because you really do sympathize with him. Like I said, these are teenagers, so of course Cyborg would want to be normal again. And when he reveals the stuff he couldn't finish because of his accident, it really lets you see a much deeper side to him, as well as gives what I consider to be one of the most powerful lines in the series.
And when I was at the Hive, for a while there, I actually felt normal.
I did not know you before, so to me, you are normal.
This episode has it all. It's funny, it's well written, it's emotional, and if you're an adult like me, it reminds you of your own teenage years, which gives you a bit of a nostalgia trip. Definitely a sign of a great season to come. X. And speaking of season 3 being a great season, this is the 5th straight episode we've included from it, and this is easily the best episode from that season. Now in season 1, there's an episode called Mass where Robin went undercover as a villain called Red X to get close to Slade, and he ended up regretting it because his plan forced him to lie to his friends, and he felt like he came close to crossing the line from being a hero to being a villain. But this episode starts with someone else stealing the suit and becoming the new Red X.
This episode primarily deals with trust issues amongst the Titans, seeing as, how Jem just pointed out seconds ago, that Robin lied to his friends by disguising himself as Red X in order to get closer to Slade. Knowing what Robin did in the past, the rest of the Titans begin to question him immediately when they see Red X show up again. Only this time, it's not Robin underneath the mask. It's a good episode at showing how the Titans can overcome past assumptions and forgive each other for their past mistakes. Red X as a returning character is also the perfect anti-hero, seeing as he has a lot more snark and wit to his lines when talking to the other Titans.
You know, cutie, the only crime here is that you and I haven't gone out on a...
That's such a great line.
It is indeed. And aside from being a fun character, Red X actually has a pretty strong purpose as he forces Robin to look at the wrong he's done. I mean, you can argue Robin had learned his lesson, but the thing is, his actions, regardless, have dire consequences not just on his friends, but on the city as well. Because Robin hooked this suit up with a dangerous chemical in order to power it that Robin himself admits he can't destroy. And now that suit is in the hands of a criminal, showing that Robin's poor choices are coming back around to bite him even harder in the ass. I mean, if that's not a cautionary lesson, I don't know what is.
Very cautionary indeed. Overall, Red X's return was a wise choice and one I welcome with open arms. Considering there aren't too many straight anti-hero characters present in Teen Titans, this was definitely a refreshing thing to see. And while we never get to find out the identity of who's actually wearing the suit, one thing's for certain. He's still a badass dude, and that factor alone makes this one of the best in the entire series.
I thought you didn't like to play the hero. Doesn't mean I don't know how.
Mad Mod. Now, while Bunny Raven is a comedic and enjoyable episode, Mad Mod is probably this show's all-time funniest episode. It's about a crazy British nut named Mad Mod kidnapping the Titans and putting them in the school from hell, forcing them to fight their way out while fighting off being hypnotized and turned into brainless slugs. Now, the best thing about this episode is by far Mad Mod himself. One big reason for that? He's voiced by one of the greatest actors of all time. The amazing, the phenomenal, the illustrious Malcolm McDowell.
Hey, Malcolm McDowell!
I love this man!
Woo, this guy's awesome!
What a gifted actor!
He's unmatched!
He's a god walking among us!
Truly a sight to behold.
He should have gotten a better role in South Park. Really though, you can tell McDowell is having a blast with this role. Every line he says just sounds so elegant and well phrased, and even when he gets flustered, he still keeps that good old polite British charm.
Now, what did I tell you? Children today won't listen to their betters. Have to learn everything the art. Hey, oi! No throwing things while teacher is talking.
Seriously, Mad Mod is one of, if not the funniest villains in the entire series, and seeing the Titans go through with his shtick is truly a sight to behold. It's especially baffling to Starfire, who's inexperienced with the schools on Earth, and she makes this apparent when she questions Robin about what's going on.
Are all the schools on your planet this horrible?
Just wait till you get to college. Then this will seem like a walk in the park. The episode then results in this wild goose chase as the Titans try to catch Mad Mod and put a stop to his whole fantasy school that he's conjured up. It's very creative, what with its trippy visuals and montage chase sequence in which the song K2G by Puffy Amiyumi plays over top of it, the same artist who did the theme song. What more needs to be said? This whole thing is just one big reference to Scooby-Doo.
Oh, and don't worry, Mad Mod isn't the only humorous thing in this episode. Most of the other humor comes from Beast Boy constantly getting hypnotized, and the other Titans finding out there's only one way to snap him out of it.
Did you try this?
Nice one!
I would say the majority of this show's most memorable comedic moments come directly from this episode, and with this being only the 10th episode of the series, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I would definitely recommend watching this episode if you're in need of a good laugh, or if you just really love Malcolm McDowell.
I don't do funny.
You asked for it.
So as we stated at the beginning of the video, we limited ourselves to choosing just one multi-part episode just for the sake of not overcrowding the countdown with all of them. Apprentice, The End, Homecoming, they're all great episodes in their own right, but as we said, we could only choose one, and we decided to give the number 3 spot to Aftershock. Aftershock is the Season 2 finale, in which Terra has returned under orders from Slade to seek and destroy the Teen Titans. Terra, who was once their friends, was revealed to have betrayed them and sided with Slade in a previous Season 2 episode, Betrayal, which was also a contender on this list. But Aftershock pretty much serves as the defining moment for Terra's character, as she has to overcome Slade's influence and choose her own destiny after being told conflicting stories from either side.
This is where the writing for this show really starts to stand out, as it seems like this staff excelled with character conflictions. At first, Terra is incredibly rootless to the Titans. In fact, the way she talks to them, she almost sounds like an internet troll.
What did we ever do to make you hate us so much?
You were born.
But once part 2 starts, it becomes apparent that the reason she was like this was because she was trying her damnedest to not let her feelings catch up with her. And seeing as Terra has been established as kind of a lone wolf throughout the season, it's no surprise she'd want to keep it that way. Plus, there's tons of implications, not just in this episode, but in most of Season 2, that Slade had been mentally manipulating her since long before she joined the Titans, and she had to stick to her mission and not let her feelings get in the way of that, which really makes her seem like the most complex character this show's ever had.
It showcases Slade at one of his most sinister moments yet, as we see how far he was willing to torment Terra into double-crossing the friends that once took her in. Seeing the Titans respond by not holding back against her, viewing her as a villain now, is what makes this all the more unfortunate for her. Terra is a character that most viewers are going to sympathize with because of her situation. She's had difficulty controlling her powers and never really honed her skills until she was brought in by Slade as an apprentice, the same way he attempted to recruit Robin in Season 1. She's a very tragic hero in that regard. Although, by the end, she ultimately overthrows Slade and sends him to his demise because she finally learns to think for herself.
You can't control me anymore!
Unfortunately though, unlike most Cartoon Network shows where this would be a cause to give Terra a happy ending, Terra instead meets a very grim fate that really leaves you feeling heartbroken despite her betrayals to the Titans. This episode also showcases Beast Boy in probably his most mature role, as he starts telling Terra that her actions were by her choice and bringing up the things Slade had no effect on. And his refusal to let Terra blame Slade for her actions is what frees her from Slade's control. This episode is easily one of the show's most powerful, and it leaves you feeling all kinds of emotions by the end of it, which, personally, I think is something only the best shows can truly obtain. And keep in mind, this is only number 3, so Let that speak volumes for the next 2 episodes on this list.
Things change. Talk about a way to end a series, huh? Things Change, a cliffhanger episode and series finale, ends with the Titans returning home after being gone for so long, only to find that things have shifted greatly since they were last in Jump City. Not only that, but Beast Boy ends up stumbling across a girl that ends up looking a lot like Terra, so he begins to spend his time tracking her down so he can speak to her one-on-one after being gone for so long.
Unfortunately, this girl completely denies being Terra, and Beast Boy is unwilling to accept this, and he keeps trying to jog her memory, only to find a lot of the things Terra used to love, she doesn't anymore. And while this is going on, the Titans are fighting a monster that keeps changing based off the elements it touches. Now, I want you to remember this, because we are going to talk more about this monster by the end. But for now, let's focus on Terra and Beast Boy's parts. Now, after Beast Boy fails on multiple occasions to jog Terra's memory, she eventually admits that she knows she used to be Terra, but she's not anymore. And Terra is never going to come back.
Things change, Beast Boy. The girl you want me to be is just a memory. That's not me. I'm not a hero. To save the world. I'm just a girl with a geometry test next period and I haven't studied.
This is saying that change is inevitable, and you can fight all you want to keep something the same, especially when it was once a big part of your life, but eventually something might happen to change that, and if it does, you honestly can't do anything about it.
It's such a cliffhanger to end the series on, but at the same time, it's also the perfect closer. Why? Because the message is right there in the title. Things change. Just as Jem had mentioned, we cannot prevent progress. Time is going to continue to move forward, and things will never be the same as they once were as a result. And it's not just shown with Terra and Beast Boy's arc. Just look at the monster that the other Titans are fighting. It's always changing form and constantly getting away, showing that the Titans cannot put a stop to it. Things change, and there's nothing that can be done about that. Kinda like how the series changed from an action comedy to an all-out comedy when it was rebooted.
Well, it's not even that terrible reboot as a sign of changes. The creators of Teen Titans initially intended for it to be a kid show, but after a while, the show started to appeal to an older audience, resulting in many of the later darker themes you would see. I always say a good series finale is one that can end a series in a way that sums up the entire series and makes you want to rewatch it once you reach it, and I would say this one did that tenfold. Now you can argue when it was that Teen Titans got darker. You can argue it was in Season 3, which has some of the more darker episodes, or that it was at the end of Season 2 when the show tackled Terra's storyline. But to us, this change came during one very important and very well-known episode.
But before we get into all that, here's the episodes we'd rank 11 through 20.
Now, to a lot of people, Teen Titans is a classic, and I would say it's hard to question why when you have a show that's able to write excellent stories, drama, and humor.
It's hands down one of the greatest action cartoons of the 2000s, and still holds up today with its wit and humor to balance out the dramatic storylines and character arcs. But, as we stated at the end of Things Change, there is one very important episode that stands out above all the rest.
How long is forever? I mean, this really shouldn't surprise anyone at this point. This Season 2 debut is the quintessential Teen Titans episode. It was the first time Teen Titans actually got real and started discussing the dark adult topics it would go on to excel at in the later seasons. It's about Starfire fearing her friends are going to drift apart because of their constant fighting, and after fighting a time-traveling villain, she gets thrusted 20 years into the future and finds out that her friends have long since disbanded, and most of them are living miserable and sad lives.
Besides, I'm in the showbiz now.
How Long is Forever is commonly referred to as one of the most bittersweet episodes in the series, and it shows. It tackles a question that most teams and groups of people may not ever even want to think about. What would happen if they split up? Well, this episode shows us exactly that, with Cyborg being run down and forced to remain in Titan's tower while Beast Boy gets a job as a sideshow act, and Raven traps herself in isolation. It's a very bleak and dreary future for all the characters once Starfire disappears, with Robin, who's seen to have moved on to his new alias Nightwing, being the only character that's still going around fighting crime. It's such a disheartening nightmare for Starfire, to see these terrible things happen to her best friends now that she's been gone for so long.
What's also interesting about this episode is that, in Go, it's revealed that Starfire was the whole reason the Titans formed in the first place. Because she became a fugitive and fled to Earth, she inadvertently got the Titans together. And when you look at it like that, it seems to make even more sense why the Titans would fall apart without her. It kinda tugs on your heartstrings seeing how lost all the Titans become with the loss of one of their own. But the episode doesn't stay totally brooding either. Every now and then, they crack a funny joke to keep it from getting too depressing.
Dude, that is so unfair.
It illustrates how each and every single one of the Titans relies on the others, for without them, they'd all be much worse off. It's an important lesson, one that many shouldn't take for granted. Even with your differences, you should come to appreciate those close to you while you have them, because someday you might not. And on top of that, it's also important to note that while a past can never be changed, the future can be, as seen at the end of the episode when Starfire returns home to prevent this bleak future from ever occurring. It's commenting on how we as individuals shouldn't dwell on the past, but rather focus on the future, and how what we do in the present affects the future immensely. Even the smallest change can drastically shift the outcome. And that, my friends, is what we call the butterfly effect. No, not that butterfly effect.
Overall, this episode is where the show found what it was best at, and it knew what type of audience it wanted. Even though the show was initially intended to appeal to little kids, like its eventual predecessor tries to do, it was clear the show found its audience and knew how to appeal to them. And in a way, I think that's another reason this episode chose to talk about the past being set in stone. Yes, in the past they were a kid's show, but now that they were viewed by a different audience, the best thing to do was to adapt to that in a way that would give the show a good future. And you know what? I would say this show did just that. And it all started with this perfect episode.
So, is it too late to do this Festival of Friendship thing?
Oh, it's never too late!
And that'll be it for this video. And you know what? Looking back on this show, it's much better than I remember. I remember this show being perfect to watch if you wanted something to entertain you for half an hour, but now I think the show is perfect to watch if you want something you can actually learn from.
And I couldn't agree more. This is exactly why so many of us look back on Teen Titans so fondly. It wasn't just an action show, or just a comedy show, or just a drama show. It was all of those combined into one.
And it's a show I'd recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for the Shadow Streak. It was so much fun getting to discuss this show with someone that shares my love for it.
And thank you, Jem, for having me. I had a blast, and I'm really glad I got to join you for this one.
And thank you all for watching. If you want to see more of Shadow here, there will be a link to his channel, as well as to a few of his videos in the description below. Shadow is an incredibly underrated YouTuber who deserves much more than 11,000 subs in my opinion. So I recommend going to his channel and seeing for yourself how interesting and entertaining his reviews are. And if you want to see more of my channel, there will be a link to some of my videos in the description as well. And follow both of us on Twitter for more updates on our future videos. Anyway, thank you all for watching, thanks again to Shadow for joining me, and I'll see you in the next review.
C.H. Greenblatt. He's an excellent cartoonist and an exceptional writer. Before commenting, please be sure to watch the entire video because I do defend both sides of the argument.